Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, GCP, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
Ryan,
and Peter.
Episode 212, recorded for May 10th, 2023. The Cloud Pod wades into microservice versus monoliths. Good evening, Matt, Ryan, Jonathan, and hey, Peter, welcome back.
Peter, hello.
Hey.
Good to
Long
see
time.
you all again.
I know you've been traveling the world, doing some things, so we're happy to have you back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I hate to see you leave.
Well, we have news this week, and I guess Peter, you are our first news story for the week.
I am riding off into the sunset and retiring from my podcasting career. So I got to say, I'm so glad that you guys landed someone with much better opinions than me, who probably also doesn't have to deal with the non-disparagement agreements that I had to. So I'm sure everyone is going to love hearing Matt's hot takes every week. And I definitely wanted to thank you all for the years of education and fun. And I will definitely start listening to the podcast now that I do not have to hear my own voice. So.
Well, that's good. We appreciate you finally becoming a listener and helping our numbers up. That's good. Well, it's been a pleasure having you, of course. And, I think when I first asked your brother if you could, come and do the show, I think there was a confusion that it was only one episode, and then we tricked you into it.
Yes.
So we've appreciated you joining us for, basically 200 some odd episodes, and giving us our insights on the partner side, which has been really helpful as well, because while I did partner in the past, you are currently in the partner side, and it's an ever evolving business out there. And so we've been really appreciative of that perspective as well. Even when you can't badmouth the clouds like we do, it's still been valuable. So thank you very much.
Of course.
Yeah. But of course, you're always welcome to come back. So if you want to hop on, you know where we're at. You can always come.
I will.
Us. Or if Foghorn has something really cool they want to present,
I will plug anything I can.
You're always welcome to come and do that. So
absolutely.
So you'll go to special guest status when you want to come. Nice. There you go. Awesome. Well, let's get into other news. The FinOps Foundation has announced Focus, which is an open source initiative designed to help companies more easily track their cloud costs. The goal of the initiative is to develop a standard specification for organizing cloud spending and usage data. And in the future, Focus will also provide a number of related data management capabilities. Microsoft and Google will join the steering committee tasked with managing the project and will be coming out with support for this very, very soon. There's a quote here from Udam Dewarja, the chair of the FinOps Foundation's Focus Working Group. Focus will solve problems that organizations maturing their cloud adoption now face. Today, there's no clear way to unify cost and usage data sets across different vendors. So that's great. Standardizes terminology for describing cloud expenses and usage metrics, and provides you a standardized schema or a data format in which financial information can be organized. Then you can build this into things like Elasticsearch and others that use standardized formats. The first version will roll out in June, which will be great. And can we just get Amazon on this too? But I'm sure there'll be more announcements about this coming up at the upcoming FinOps X Foundation conference in June in San Diego. So do check that out if you're interested.
I actually have something to say about that as well. We have one of our directors, Mike Wisely, is in the FinOps Foundation and been really excited about this and productizing a little service offering that's going to include both Foghorn services as well as some tooling. And Focus is going to be part of the tooling compatibility, and it'll be across clouds. So maybe that'll be my first guest appearance when we launch that service offering.
Yeah, that'd be great. We'd love to have you for that. And then I will actually be at the FinOps X Foundation. You've been missed out when I talked about it, but I'll be there. Cool. So if your people are going to be there as well, we should definitely connect. But
cool.
As I mentioned in prior episodes, I'll be there with stickers and things for you to find. I'm trying to talk them into getting a sticker table, so I don't have to stand around holding stickers, but we'll see if that happens. All right, moving on to AWS. There's a new storage-optimized Amazon EC2 i4G instances powered by the Graviton 2 processor and the AWS Nitro SSD. These come in standardized shapes from 2 vCPU and 16 gigs of memory all the way up to 64 vCPU and 512 gigs of memory. And you can get as much as 15 terabytes of storage if you want on that big boy. They say this delivers a 15% better performance than their storage optimized instances. And this leverages all of the greatest Nitro SSD NVMe to do that with 4,600 megabits per second of sequential writes and 8,000 megabytes of sequential reads. That's a lot of reads and writes.
Yeah, all your ML workloads belong to us.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy because it's like even some of these numbers are just staggering for workloads when, the traditional sort of standard app is, hundreds of megabytes, maybe like at peak. So it's a lot. I'm glad I don't have to pay for this.
Yeah, I'm happy that kind of performance locally, but in the cloud's pretty awesome.
Yeah, 800,000 random write IOPS. I mean, that's just crazy. And then they can support 1 million random reads. That's, you buy a whole SAN just to do that in prior lives. And that'd be your entire workload. Now you're talking about a single server with that kind of throughput. It's incredible.
I'm just waiting for somebody to run their SQL database on it and waiting for it to die. And then wondering where all the data went.
Oh, well, I mean, a SQL would have to run on Graviton 2 first, which...
That's true. Sorry, MySQL. How about that?
There you go. For those of you who have to support .NET apps, very often we talk about there's got to be standardized patterns and methods for doing .NET on AWS. And up until now, there really has just been some example code, or you'd go search GitHub or Stack Overflow, heaven forbid. But AWS has a new open source sample application, the fictitious used book e-commerce store called Bob's Used Books for .NET developers. The sample app is built on ASP.NET Core version 6 and represents an initial modernization of typical on-premise custom application. This represents the first stages of modernization. The application uses modern cross-platform .NET, enabling it to run on Windows and Linux systems in the cloud. And the .NET app is based on a monolithic model view controller design, or MVC. Typically of the .NET framework era, it also uses a single Microsoft SQL Server database to contain inventory, shopping cart, user data, and more, and leverages several AWS native services, including Cognito, RDS, S3, AWS SSM, Secrets Manager, CloudFront, and Recognition. And the only thing I was sad about is that it doesn't use store procedures, which all .NET applications must use store procedures.
Yeah, well, I mean, they want to build a bridge for .NET into the cloud, right? And so they can't start off with stored procedures because it's so hard to make that work in a cloud native environment.
Yeah, it would be nice though if they give you a pattern to, hey, move your store procedure out of a SQL database and move it into serverless or into some other a thing like that. That'd be super nice. I was impressed they tried to use Cognito with a .NET application because, I mean, based on how hard it is to get a .NET or a Linux Java application to use Cognito, I can't imagine a .NET app.
Isn't this just API, only as deep as the API gateway layer? Like I imagine, it'd be very difficult. I do think that, I mean, this was definitely something that has been asked for a while, like supporting teams who are trying to make the leap from, supporting .NET and .NET frameworks in data centers. Like they just need something to chew on and an example of how to get there. And, especially if they're being asked to switch over to Java and some other technologies and sort of this, like it's really easy to get lost. So I like seeing these things as an example that you can point at and, hopefully they don't copy pasta the code, but, at least they have that to reference now.
It definitely is something that I wish the cloud providers provided more of these like sample segments of like, hey, based on different technologies, these are the way you can leverage other services. Just even spark ideas in people's heads of different things they can do.
Yeah, I can imagine that executives would love to be able to use this when they're trying to get their company to move to the cloud. And some engineer is saying, no, our stuff doesn't move. We've got .NET, ASP.NET. It's not going to work because SQL Server and we can't integrate with Cognito and RDS and S3. And wait a minute, there's simple code right here. Go do your job.
Love taking out excuses. The one thing I did thought was interesting, they did say that they're curious about what modernization journeys you would decide to take with the application, which will help them create future content for the sample. And if you'd like to make a pull request with sample content, you can do that as well. And they also, if you want to get this feedback, you can do it in the issue section of the GitHub. And I'm just most excited that I can create an Amazon.com competitor with a .NET application given to me by Amazon.com. So there you go. Should probably check the terms of the license.
You can do a pull request with Justin's new books as a additional section.
Yeah, exactly. AWS is launching a new user notification capability in a single place in the AWS console to set up and view your AWS notifications across multiple AWS accounts, regions, and services. You can essentially set up and view notifications from over 100 AWS services such as S3, EC2, the Health Dashboard, CloudWatch Alarms, or AWS support cases in a consistent, human-friendly format. You can also configure delivery channels via email, chat, and push notifications to the AWS console mobile app where you can receive the notifications. Or you can just view them in the AWS Management Console. So this is nice because for those of you who've ever had to go set up notifications on anything, it's typically like 4 or 5 clicks through 3 or 4 or 5 different areas of the application. Typically, the pushing application, then you have to go to the SNS topic to go accept the topic and the subscription and set that up to your email or chat. So nice to have this kind of finally in a single dashboard. Welcome to 2023 Amazon, where all of their cloud providers have basically sort of had this for you already.
Could this be in the AWS console in any account in your org, or do you have to be in the...
Any account. It's cross account.
Yeah, it can support cross account.
Yep.
It looks like from deep in the notes that there's a whole bunch of stuff you have to do in order to get the event bridge events to kind of flow between the accounts. So it doesn't look like it's press a button, get all your accounts in the organization. Looks like it's going to require some setup for multiple accounts.
Yeah, they do use EventBridge for the multiple accounts, but the fact that it can support it is still nice, even if you have to build the pattern to do it yourself. But it'd be nice if it was something they would add into organizations, so you could just click that in organizations and set that up for you. But maybe that'll come in a future release.
Yeah, it'd be nice if it was something they paid for instead of us having to pay for.
Oh, come on! This is Amazon Cloud. You pay for everything. They give you nothing for free other than your free tier, which you'll use within 10 minutes.
Yeah, the other thing that I saw on this, and I don't know, it was a little while since I looked at this, that you couldn't configure it via APIs. It did not come with API support, and so that was something that on Twitter, raised some concern. Which is, if you have a bunch of accounts and you're trying to set this all up, and especially now, knowing that EventBridge is key on there, like do sort of want to have that be able, have the ability to sort of set that up programmatically as part of an automation platform or a landing zone setup.
Well, the EventBridge part definitely has an API, but yeah,
the EventBridge part does.
Yeah,
it's that final notification to the web app or email that doesn't.
The other thing I liked about this too is it had the ability to aggregate these alerts. So instead of getting an email for every time Amazon decides to send me marketing emails, I can have them all consolidated into once a day, which is so nice.
And filter, like the filtering is also key, right? I only want alerts from my prod accounts, which is the only examples.
And you can filter by region and stuff, so you don't care about health dashboard notifications for some small thing in your DR site. You can turn that stuff off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's super nice because it makes things like quota management across hundreds of accounts so much easier to automate now.
Oh yeah, that brings me back.
Shudder.
It wasn't all that bad, but it was just it's just one of those silly things, like go out and spin up hundreds of lambdas to go check all the quotas and do some math and then generate a report. And it's another lambda to go figure out who to talk to. These things are nice when you don't have to build all that.
I was confused about the need to have the support case updates that way, because I was like, well, I used to always get those. And I was like, oh, it's right, because we are all running a DL that all of the Amazon root accounts pointed to. So every time someone created a support account, we would just get CC'd on the email by default because we were the root account email address. I was like, oh yeah, I guess if you didn't do that, that wouldn't have worked. So yes, there's options now you didn't have before. Moving on to Mountain View and Google. Chronicle has several new features this week to make securing in the Google Cloud even easier than ever. If you're using Chronicle for your SIM or for other security SOAR operations, you get a new Looker-based advanced report module to create strong BI capabilities and have them completely embedded into your dashboard. Customers can now grant access to Google support to help address your issues. There's a new case list view to help it easier to find those cases raised by Chronicle. There's a new integration between the Chronicle alerts and the SOAR module. There's enhanced user UDM search, and there's now ability to schedule reports, so you don't have to log into the console to get all the data about your security posture to your SOC. You can just email them, which is always appreciated, right?
Email.
I mean, it's better than having an SOP where they go check a dashboard, I think. But,
Yeah. I was thinking about that with single pane of glass. Like, do you really want people staring at a single pane of glass to get alerts, or do you want them to get paged or shocked when something goes down? Yeah.
Eyes on glass. Eyes on glass.
Yeah. In true developer fashion, I want all the things. Like, I would like my single pane of glass where I can go look and see everything without any configuration. I would also like it to not have to go look at the thing. So.
Yeah. Oh, I did forget for our Australian listeners, there's expanded regional support in Australia for IRAP protection. I don't know what that is, but someone in Australia does. BigQuery differential privacy feature is now available to you in preview. This is a SQL building block that analysts and data scientists can use to anonymize their data. And in the future, they will be able to integrate differential privacy with BigQuery data clean rooms to help organizations anonymize and share sensitive data all while preserving their privacy. Too. To build on differential privacy library that is used by the Ads Data Hub and the COVID-19 Community Mobility Report. And they're also partnering with Tumult Labs, a leader in differential privacy for companies and government agencies. Tumult Labs offers technology and professional services to help Google Cloud customers with privacy implementations, which is great because if I was asked to figure out privacy on my system, I would definitely want to call them and not try to figure that out. And all the laws of privacy, because there's so many laws. Differential privacy is an anonymization technique that limits the personalized information that is revealed by an output, and is commonly used to allow inference and to share data while preventing someone from learning information about an entity in the data set and potentially introducing bias.
Anything that can make anonymizing data for, especially when you deal with GDPR or any of the other regulations easier, especially then to give to developers logs and things like that, or to external parties if you're selling the data or anything along those lines, makes life exponentially easier.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how much easier this makes it. But this has always been a big ask for people moving to the cloud who then, want an easy way to have test data in their test environments and other use cases. So if it does make it easier and it's not just a tool that does it on BigQuery, then I can imagine some people are going to be pretty happy.
Yep. Anything to make privacy easier, GDPR and all those things are a pain.
Yeah.
So Azure had a couple articles this week. They're not super exciting, so we'll probably go through these ones relatively quickly. But so Azure HPC is now available to you for future health emergencies, which I hope this is wasted investment by Microsoft, because I hope to not have a future health emergency like COVID ever again. But this will enable researchers to unleash the next generation of healthcare breakthroughs and the computational capabilities offered by HPC HP series VMs powered by the AMD EPYC TM CPU cores allow researchers to help accelerate insights and advances into genomics, precision medical, and clinical trials with near infinite high-performance bioinformatics infrastructure capabilities, which is all a lot of really big words. I don't know what they mean. But basically, the gist of this article is that the idea is that you can use these GPUs to do all kinds of modeling for future outbreaks, how they are spread, how they get controlled, and then how you break into the molecular level of the particular virus or disease to model proteins, antibodies, and antivirals to hopefully help prevent the next pandemic, which would be nice to prevent it. So I guess that's okay, but I prefer not to have one altogether.
That would be better.
Yeah.
We're not due for one now for 100 years, so it's not going to be our problem.
Unless we live forever. But
yeah, then it'll be our problem.
Curses. There's a flaw in this plan.
I mean, in podcast world, we'll live forever because podcasts never die. So well, at least until the website dies, then it probably does die. But.
Yeah, millions of years from now, our voices will be just being heard in the Andromeda galaxy.
All those poor souls.
They'll be taken over by AI, and this podcast will continue to be run by AIs.
Yeah.
I think near infinite high performance is probably a bit of a marketing stretch.
You think?
Yeah. Well, I do like AMD CPUs, but near infinite they are not.
Prove them wrong. How dare you?
Just use Justin's credit card bill.
Yeah. No, don't use the CloudPod account, okay?
Yeah.
But we'll talk about it a little bit here. But there's a potential way they could get burstable capacity for their AI. So maybe it is unlimited. They just keep bursting through clouds. We'll get there in a second. Continued. The next one is the cloud-based chip design for national security achieves a key milestone on Azure. Continued U.S. leadership in emerging technologies requires a sustainable supply of advanced chips to power innovation from AI to quantum computing. The CHIPS and Science Act passed last year aims to boost domestic research and manufacturing capacity for critical microelectronics. To support this, the DoD launched the Rapid Assured Microelectronics Prototypes Using Advanced Commercial Capabilities Program. Gotta love the government, man. They do call it RAMP for short, an effort to accelerate the secure, sustainable development of microelectronics for defense technologies. As part of this effort, Azure has developed 3 new state-of-the-art chips to benefit the Azure government cloud customers and to ensure compliance with DoD supply chain requirements. So basically, those requirements are it cannot be manufactured in China in any possible human way. And so that's what this is all about. And so those will become available to you in the Azure government cloud. If security and you potentially process government secrets, you should probably think about learning more about this.
Yeah, I think the China-Taiwan TSMC issue is going to reach some kind of boiling point fairly soon. So we better start building chip fab plants here. Otherwise, we're going to be back in the Stone Ages.
Yeah, I don't see why we wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, you got some big names in this article. Raytheon's in here. You got BAE Systems. These are all big, national security vendors who do a lot of stuff. So this RAMP program is all about getting these things to be better. And so, yeah, hopefully, we don't have another war in the world. We don't need another one. But if it happens in the China-Asia area, then we'll have some options.
We were lucky to get the warning shot of supply chain issues. Right?
Really.
Yeah. Didn't take a World War for us to learn this lesson. So hopefully we can adjust in time.
So is this them building their own ARM processor chips, or are they then trying to leverage like Intel and AMD to build chips for them in the US? I'm trying to fully understand this one.
Yeah, so the RAMP program is allocating, I think it's a couple $100 million towards chip manufacturing and to build the capabilities in the United States to basically build these things. So Intel's got some of the money, AMD's got some of it. And so basically, if they have chip fabs here, they're being repurposed to do some of this. And it is ARM chips. And they're also looking to build potentially new ARM chip fabs here in the US as well to support this initiative. And they just, again, it's about national security and making sure that, the chips that we use in our national security devices are not compromised in some low-level microelectronic manipulation by the Chinese government, but also to make sure that in the event that, there is a war or something, that we have access to the chips and things we need to be successful. Hundreds of millions of dollars being dedicated to this. Thanks, COVID.
I remember predicting that AWS were going to build a fab plant. That didn't happen yet.
Has not happened yet.
Well, by your measure, then it'll probably happen in 3 to 4 years. Like you're just prognosticator usually.
He's just a little too early.
He's ahead of the curve.
Yeah, like Slack getting bought. He was a year too early.
Yeah.
So.
Have you been waiting months and months to hire your new AWS, GCP, or Azure architect, only to have them be poached at the 11th hour by a startup with a juice bar? Initiatives stalled because you're having trouble hiring? Well, I have a simple solution: Foghorn Consulting. Foghorn Consulting provides top-notch cloud engineers to the world's most innovative companies and can be burning down your DevOps and cloud backlogs as soon as next week. Foghorn certified AWS, GCP, and Azure professionals are armed with infrastructure as code, and from day one will be designing performant, optimized cloud-native or hybrid environments that deliver on the promise of cloud. Their FogOps solution even provides on-demand cloud engineering to augment your existing teams. Visit www.foghornconsulting.com or send an email to cloudtalentnow@foghornconsulting.com and tell them the CloudPod sent you. Your dedicated FogOps team is with you for the long haul, and they bring their own juice.
All right, so let's talk about burstable AI capacity on Oracle. So apparently Oracle and Microsoft have discussed an unusual agreement to rent servers from each other if either company runs out of computing power for cloud customers that use large-scale AI, according to a person with knowledge of this arrangement. So this is rumor. The proposed deal discussions have been happening apparently with Oracle Chairman Larry Ellison and other senior executives to firm up broader AI strategies, including how to use AI software to improve the company's core software products. The article goes on to say that Oracle is also trying to build its own AI services like Vertex and SageMaker, etc., and those should be coming to market later this year. But all I can think here is, who might have bought a lot of A100 Tensor Core CPUs that are sitting around, maybe not being used, while there's a shortage of AI chips everywhere else, and then who also happens to have a direct connect between their cloud and the other cloud, for things like ordering Oracle databases that could take advantage of selling AI chips to Azure for a profit. I don't know who that could be.
Give me an O.
So they said sharing them, but
So Mike, you think for the most part, Microsoft is going to be supplying the demand and Oracle the supply?
that is what I think this is about. Yes.
That's fair.
I feel like we should cut out the middleman and go directly to Oracle on their spot market and get chips for cheap.
You just have to build all of the AI components yourself.
Yeah, no big deal.
Yeah, no problem. Then, also you're going to set up Oracle, which if you go back to Justin Does a Thing, when I set up Oracle for the first time, is not easy. So, definitely keep that in mind as you...
That's why we delegate to Ryan Lucas.
Oh, no.
And make him hate us more. It's fine.
That's why Ryan Lucas always looks so tired.
Yeah. This is just going to end up with still no access to Oracle, and I'm just going to swear a lot more. I think that's...
Yeah, I sort of wonder that sometimes. I'm like, would Ryan hate me more if I made him do a project in Azure or Oracle? And I don't know the answer to that question.
I don't either. Let's not find out. I don't.
Yeah. No plans.
Putting my money on Oracle. Putting my money in Oracle.
I don't know. Have you used the Azure console every day? I think.
I don't think it's as bad.
You are crazy.
It's been tainted.
Yes, that's why I'm here talking to everyone.
Drinking the Azure Kool-Aid. I mean, that when it takes you 25 minutes to figure out where they put something as simple as like volumes, it's like, okay, why is it there? I don't understand.
Yeah, but the dynamic search for everything in the console, and I can just like type the name and it finds it, is a really nice feature.
As long as you know that like things like the CDN is called front door service. You have to know that first.
Yeah, but what about SageMaker or any of the other services that you're like...
Yeah, no one uses that.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Well, we were going to do another Cloud Journey series this week, but there was kind of an epic brouhaha on the internet this week about something very close and dear to the cloud native journey that we've been talking about, which is that the opinionated creator of Ruby on Rails and cloud repatriation, who we've talked about many times, DHH, or David Hanneman Hansen, has basically posted a blog post saying that Amazon can't even make microservices or serverless work for themselves. They can't make sense of it. His latest poke in the eye, of course, at Amazon starts from a pretty innocent post by the Amazon Prime team, which we'll talk about here in a second, where they moved from a microservices architecture to a monolithic architecture. DHH basically sums up his entire opinion that microservices are crazy town, and that the real world results of the microservice theory is that in practice, microservices pose perhaps the biggest siren song of needlessly complicating your system, and serverless only makes it worse. He states that microservices are basically zombie architecture, another strain of intellectual contagion that refuses to die and has been eating brains since the dark days of J2EE and remote server beans through the web services Death Star nonsense of years ago. And he particularly points out that Amazon was the one who started all of this craziness with their huge move to service-oriented architecture and API calls. And ultimately, Amazon can't make it work either, so you shouldn't try.
Bah, humbug.
DHH seems like one of those people that if you had working for you in a company, like you could not coordinate as part of a major initiative that needed to span across multiple teams. Like all of the points here are largely like, this only works with Amazon scale. This only works at Amazon scale, which I think that there's a lot of sort of counter evidence to that. But I mean, I think that it's also if you're going to make everything hyperbolic and binary, where it's like there's a right and a wrong, you're always going to be able to pick and find solutions that aren't a good fit in that, because there's a ton of stuff, in fact, the majority in the middle.
Yeah. So let's pivot over to Prime moving to monolithic application, first of all, because that's where all this starts, which is a lovely blog post by the Amazon Prime engineering team, which I did see this when it first came across the webs, and I just wrote it off because it has a lovely title called Scaling Up the Prime Video and Audio Video Monitoring Service and Reducing Costs by 90%, which, whatever, I don't care about Prime. Their costs are ridiculous, no matter what you do. And so, when you read through this, you realize all of a sudden that this is not all of Amazon Prime. So first of all, it's not all of that. It's really just a microservice of Prime. And in this case, they deal with big video files and long-running processes, which are not things that I would necessarily we want to put on serverless anyways. They point out that what they built worked and wasn't meeting their service SLIs and SLOs, and so the re-architecture to a monolith addressed those key KPI indicators. These patterns are all tools and methods, and there's never one correct answer, and it depends on many factors, but they all know that microservices should be omnipotent and immutable. And if you break them down too much, like in this case, you end up in microservice dependency logic hell, which is basically what happened here. So this is a microservice that was trying to become more microservices, and that ultimately hurt their SLI and SLO. And so they refactored it into a monolith that actually can handle the large video service and the multiple calls to S3 that they needed to make to, basically transcode video.
I think the problem they had really is that they took the software architecture and kind of projected that onto the infrastructure services they could use to fill those particular functions in the service they were delivering. Whereas, and yes, it worked. And yes, it made sense logically. The diagram's the same regardless of whether it's in a monolith or whether it uses managed services. But they realized they made a mistake and they need to bring those back to be more tightly coupled again. It makes sense. There's monoliths and there's monoliths. There's huge monoliths that are unmanageable, and there's small monoliths like this, which make total sense, just as there's microservices deployments which are completely out of control, and some which make sense. It's a huge sliding scale, but to me, this just kind of seems like a little overzealous sort of turning what should be a software architecture into sort of an infrastructure deployment type architecture.
It's not the first time I've seen engineers take software architecture and try to apply it directly to cloud. And this is one of those gotchas that can happen to you in cloud native, which is where a cloud center of excellence can kind of help you address those gaps and help you identify where that might be happening. But there's a really great video out there. I'll link to it in the show notes about a fictional company called Bell Computers. And they're overly breaking down microservices. And basically, if your microservice isn't omnipotent and can't answer the question without having to call 5 other microservices, you're going to end up in a really bad latency nightmare of dependencies. And so, there are points where you can get a microservice to be too small as well. And again, I think when you think about this as one particular microservice of the entire Amazon Prime solution, this is just an area where a monolith made more sense, and that's okay.
I think it's always about just using the right tool in the right place. And here you're dealing with massive video files, and they were trying to convert and pull different data points out. And, that level of data just doesn't work well a lot of times. And you got to use the right tool in the right place at the right time. And the microservices approach with massive data sets just didn't work for them. I think it's better that they realized it than just kept going down that hole until they were so far deep that, the system was crashing upon itself.
So, of course, all this controversy spurred Werner Vogels into action, who had to write a blog post on all things distributed blog, of course. And he points out a couple things that I want to point out. One, that software architecture is not like the architecture of bridges and houses. After a bridge is constructed, it's pretty hard, and it's not, if not impossible, to change. And software allows you to make changes, and as you evolve the architecture, you may change components. He highlights how if you hire the best engineers, you should trust them to make the best decisions, and that there is not one architectural pattern to rule them all. Which is a really pragmatic approach to what we just said. So thanks, Werner, for agreeing with everything we just said here on the Cloud Pod. We appreciate you, as usual.
Yeah, I want to disagree with David Hansen here, but Ruby on Rails, come on. He made Ruby on Rails. How can I disagree with someone who created Ruby on Rails and raced in the 24 Hours of Le Mans?
Yeah.
Come on.
He's also the one of the creators of Basecamp, if you needed a lightweight project management software. He's moving to his on-prem data center, so it'll be less secure. So you just remember that. But he does have some guidelines that I think are a little interesting too on how to recover from microservices if you've gone too far and you need to go back to monolith. He gives you 5 tips on how to get back on track, which is path to monoliths. And remember when he said, stop digging. If you can't clean it up, if you keep making a mess at the same time, so stop making new microservices.
That's super helpful.
Yeah, super helpful. Thanks.
Yeah.
Number 2, consolidate critical dependent paths first. Number 3, leave your isolated performance hotspots for last, because of course, do the hardest thing that causes the most impact to performance for last. That makes sense. Prioritize dropping the most esoteric implementations. And lastly, learn to partition large systems with modules rather than networks. So thanks for that, DHH. I appreciate it.
So some of this is on Amazon, right? Because their monolith, and I'm using air quotes, is a single ECS task that runs on 2 ECS clusters with hooks to SNS and S3. So they don't specify how many containers are within each cache, but their monolith is not what the monolith was traditionally labeled and the problems associated with it, right? If you are splitting up a workload that can live in a single container, be developed by a single team, like I'd argue that that's not really a microservice. Or a monolith. What you're doing is trying to take something that is small and compartmentalized and easily managed, which are not monolith elements, and then you're trying to break that apart into 2 smaller pieces using step functions and Lambda, and that's where they hit their scaling concerns. And so I think a little bit is on the Amazon article just because it's sort of inflammatory by design, and I think it's actually misusing the term monolith. I don't think a single ECS task makes a monolith at all in the slightest.
Right.
Well, I mean, again, yeah, monolith, what is that? The definition of it.
Mm-hmm.
Inside of that, there's multiple things that are modules that are talking to each other and doing processing and handling these things, doing handoffs. So there is monolithic from that perspective. But yeah, I would agree with you. But I don't like when I read the original article and the headline of this article is scaling up the Prime Video audio video monitoring service and reducing cost by 90%. This isn't, in the sub is the move from distributed microservice architecture to a monolith application to help achieve higher scale, resilience, and reduce costs. It wasn't meant to be inflammatory. Like everyone should do this. This is the end all be all solution either. Like it's a very logical article. And again, like I mentioned earlier, they very clearly said like, hey, what we had worked. It just didn't meet the KPIs that we needed to meet. Mm-hmm. And so this was an evolution of our architecture to meet those requirements. And so we analyzed it and we determined that the handoff in the network and these things was too much. And so it made sense to stream it down to something simpler. And again, that's okay. That's what architecture is supposed to be. And, potentially this new thing saves them money because again, it runs on 2 ECS clusters, which probably have a few nodes. And, instead of having to have a lot more ECS nodes and services and tasks running out there to do all the things. So
that being said, I'm still surprised that they made this a public blog post.
Well, I don't think that they meant for it to get picked up by DHS either.
Well, no, this was making noise before his blog post because I saw this before his original response to it because it is, he wasn't the only one with this message that, Amazon is abandoning microservices.
Which is
and so a lot of people have that
too far.
Yeah, I agree. But it's also sort of like it sort of went, gained in popularity for that. I really did like Warner's response in the sense that, he didn't sort of pick a side and other than the one thing that he was very deterministic about was you need to review your architecture and you're going to have to change it over time. Like that's the only certainty. And I really appreciate that take because I think people get a little married to their implementation and they start to focus on how hard it is to bring change. And if you don't think about it from the beginning as something that's going to have to change it, you can put yourself in a really hard place.
Yeah. The other thing about the Amazon Prime article here, I was just kind of glancing at again while we were talking about it. They're leveraging S3. They're leveraging a bunch of other services from Amazon and cloud. So that even though it's a monolithic application, it's still very cloud native in this approach. And it's, again, like in the DHS example where he's repatriating his data, to replace that service, they'd have to buy SAN, they had to buy fiber network, they had to buy servers, they had to buy load balancers, they had to buy a ton of stuff that they'd have to then set up and configure. And so that's, they're still getting a lot of benefit, even though this is a monolith in this architecture from the cloud and the native, part of cloud. And, in Warner's article, he mentions that S3 is now 300 microservices to support all that when it used to be just a few. Because of all the different products and options and things that S3 can do for you now, which is amazing. And it's easier to scale when it's in small pieces than trying to scale a big, massive monolith.
I think it's interesting they mentioned cost. I mean, mentioning performance is obviously very important, but the fact that they referred to the cost of running the service kind of highlights the importance of detailed, tagging or the ability to do showbacks at a very fine-grained level because they might not have realized otherwise. If people assume that, it's Amazon, they must get AWS services for free kind of thing. Obviously, they don't. Obviously, it's all very carefully monitored.
I mean, they hit hard limits at 5% of load. I think they might have noticed.
Yeah. I mean, definitely don't get it for free, but they do budget transfers between Amazon and Amazon AWS and all the business units, because that's how big corporations work. They move money around inside them to fund things because everyone has to make a profit, or you're just a cost center. And so that's a typical thing. But I imagine they have really great rates versus the we get as the public. I'm sure they get heavily discounted. All right. Well, that was fantastic. Thanks a lot for joining us this week, Peter. We will miss you. It's been a pleasure once again.
Thank you. I will miss you all as well.
I was going to miss you until you mentioned Ruby on Rails.
Yeah, we're down to one Ruby on Rails person, which is me, and I'm not even that much of a Ruby on Rails fanboy anymore. I used to be, but I found my way out of that whole hole, unlike Peter. So yeah.
It's been good working with you, Peter.
Thank you. Likewise.
You're not a stranger, though. We'll still see you at
events and conferences,
and we always have a beer together. So.
And I still expect to be the man of the ground. The reporting from reInvent or next conferences. Like in a thunderstorm sort of way. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Very good. Well, thanks, you guys. See you next week here in the cloud.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Right.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
And that is the Week in Cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Foghorn Consulting. Subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, and tweet us your feedback at #TheCloudPod. Or join our Slack channel. Go to our website, thecloudpod.net, for sign-up instructions.